ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that Port Charles has always been a place where returns are never simple and reunions rarely bring peace, and this time, the reappearance of two key figures does not restore balance but instead deepens the fractures that have been quietly widening beneath the surface. Stella walks back into General Hospital carrying more than concern for her family, and Danny steps forward not as a grieving child, but as someone beginning to understand the weight of legacy, loss, and the dangerous truths that surround his father. Their arrivals do not exist in separate emotional spaces. They intersect in ways that amplify tension, forcing long-buried secrets and unresolved guilt into the light where they can no longer be ignored or contained. Stella's return is marked by an intensity that feels sharper than before, as if time away has not softened her instincts but refined them. She has always been perceptive, but now that perception carries a quiet urgency, a sense that something has been wrong for far longer than anyone is willing to admit. The way she observes Curtis is different, more deliberate, as if she is searching for confirmation of a truth she already fears. Curtis in turn senses the shift immediately. There is a distance in his responses, a hesitation that does not belong to a man who has nothing to hide. Every conversation between them becomes layered with unspoken meaning, every glance a silent negotiation between what can be revealed and what must remain buried. What Stella begins to suspect does not exist in isolation. It reaches into the fragile dynamics between Curtis, Portia, and Trina, a triangle already strained by past choices and lingering doubts. The secret Stella senses is not just a fact waiting to be uncovered. It is an emotional fault line capable of breaking everything apart. Portia's composure begins to crack under the pressure of Stella's presence. She understands, perhaps better than anyone, that some truths cannot be managed once they are exposed. Her fear is not simply about being judged, but about the irreversible consequences that would follow. Because once the truth is spoken, it cannot be reshaped, and the damage it causes cannot be undone. Trina stands at the center of this tension without fully understanding why the atmosphere around her has grown so heavy. She feels the shift in tone, the way conversations stop when she enters the room, the way her parents' interactions carry an edge that was not there before. There is a growing awareness within her that something is being kept from her, and that awareness begins to erode the trust she once held so firmly. Stella's behavior only intensifies that feeling. What Stella believes is protective instinct begins to take on a more aggressive form, as if she is no longer willing to wait for the truth to surface naturally. Instead, she starts to push, to question, to disrupt the fragile balance that Curtis and Portia have been trying to maintain. That push is where everything begins to spiral. Stella's actions are not reckless, but they are uncompromising, and in a situation built on silence, even a small disruption can trigger a collapse. She begins to connect details that others hoped would remain separate, drawing lines between past decisions and present consequences. The more she uncovers, the less she is willing to accept partial explanations. And as her certainty grows, so does the inevitability of confrontation. This is not simply about uncovering a secret anymore. It becomes a matter of forcing accountability, of refusing to allow another generation to be shaped by lies that were never meant to last. At the same time, Danny's return unfolds along a parallel path that feels quieter on the surface, but carries an equally explosive potential. His grief over Jason has not faded. It has evolved into something more focused, more determined. There is a shift in him, a movement from passive loss to active pursuit. He begins to question not only what happened to his father, but what has been taken from him as a result. The idea of reclaiming Jason's rights, his legacy, his place in the world, becomes more than a symbolic gesture. It becomes a mission that defines Danny's actions and decisions. What makes this pursuit so dangerous is not just Danny's determination, but his lack of awareness of the forces he is stepping into. Jason's life was never simple, never contained within the boundaries of legality or safety. To claim what belonged to Jason is to step into a world defined by risk, by enemies who do not forget, and by truths that were never meant for a child to carry. Danny does not fully understand this yet, but he feels the pull of it, the sense that his father's story is unfinished and that he has a role to play in completing it. As Danny begins to push for answers, he unknowingly intersects with the larger web of secrets that Stella is unraveling. The two threads, one rooted in family truth and the other in inherited identity, begin to intertwine. The more Danny demands clarity, the more resistance he encounters, not only from those trying to protect him, but from those who fear what his questions might reveal. Because in Port Charles, no story exists in isolation. Every truth connects to another, every secret leads to a deeper one, and every attempt to uncover the past risks exposing something far more dangerous in the present. The situation becomes increasingly volatile as these pressures build. Stella moves closer to forcing a revelation that could redefine Curtis, Portia, and Trina's entire relationship. Danny moves closer to a confrontation with a legacy that carries consequences he cannot yet comprehend. And around them, the fragile structure holding these secrets together begins to weaken. What once felt contained now feels unstable, as if the smallest trigger could cause everything to collapse at once. What makes this moment so powerful is not just the potential for revelation, but the emotional cost that will follow. Stella is driven by a belief that truth is necessary, that hiding it only prolongs the damage. But even she cannot fully predict the fallout of what she is about to uncover. Curtis faces the possibility of losing the trust he has fought to rebuild. Portia stands on the edge of exposure, knowing that the truth could redefine how she is seen by the people she loves most. Trina risks losing not just certainty, but the foundation of her identity, and Danny, in his search for justice, may find himself pulled into a reality that demands far more from him than he is ready to give. As these storylines converge, General Hospital moves into a phase defined by emotional intensity and irreversible change. The return of Stella and Danny is not a restoration of what was lost, but the beginning of something far more disruptive. Secrets are no longer safe. Silence is no longer sustainable. And the choices each character makes in the face of these revelations will determine not only their own futures, but the shape of Port Charles itself. Because in a place where truth and loyalty are constantly at odds, the moment everything is revealed is not the end of the story. It is the point where everything truly begins to fall apart. The return of Anna and Robin does not arrive as a moment of comfort or nostalgia, but as a disruption powerful enough to shift the entire foundation of Port Charles. Their presence carries a weight that cannot be ignored, because unlike others who have been circling fragments of the truth, Anna and Robin come back with clarity, with purpose, and with the kind of precision that threatens to unravel everything Cassius and Cullum have been carefully constructing. This is not simply about reopening old investigations. It is about exposing a network of manipulation that has embedded itself so deeply into the system that many no longer recognize it as corruption, but as order. Anna returns with instincts sharpened by experience, her mind already moving ahead of the surface narrative. She does not accept coincidences, especially not in a city where patterns always exist beneath the chaos. The moment she begins to review the chain of events surrounding Marco's death, Sonny's arrest, and the shifting power inside the PCPD, she sees what others have missed or chosen to ignore. There is a deliberate structure behind it all, a sequence of moves designed to redirect blame, isolate key figures, and consolidate authority. Cullum's name surfaces quickly, but Anna understands that he is not acting alone. There is another layer, another presence guiding or reinforcing the strategy, and that is where Cassius begins to emerge. Robin's return adds a different kind of intensity, one rooted not in instinct but in analysis. Where Anna senses patterns, Robin breaks them down, examining the inconsistencies that no one else has had the time or perspective to fully process. She approaches the situation not as a series of isolated incidents, but as a system of interconnected variables. Evidence that once seemed inconclusive begins to align under her scrutiny, timelines tighten, motives sharpen. And slowly, the illusion that has protected Cassius and Cullum starts to fracture. What makes their partnership so dangerous to their enemies is the balance they bring. Anna pushes forward, forcing movement, creating pressure that exposes weaknesses. Robin follows with precision, ensuring that what is uncovered cannot be dismissed or reinterpreted. Together, they do not simply investigate. They corner the truth, stripping away the layers that have allowed deception to thrive, and as they move deeper, the scope of what they uncover begins to expand beyond anything anyone expected. Cassius, who once operated within a carefully controlled identity, begins to feel that control slipping. His position within the system, once a shield, now becomes a point of vulnerability. Every decision he has made, every role he has played, is now subject to scrutiny. The identity he constructed as a means of survival becomes the very thing that threatens to expose him. He understands that Anna and Robin are not like the others who have questioned him. They will not stop at surface explanations. They will not accept partial truths, and most dangerously, they are capable of connecting the past to the present in ways that collapse the distance he has relied on to stay hidden. Cullum, on the other hand, responds not with fear but with escalation. For him, the return of Anna and Robin is not a reason to retreat, but a signal that the timeline must accelerate. Plans that were meant to unfold gradually begin to move faster, more aggressively. The removal of obstacles, once a calculated option, becomes an immediate necessity, because Cullum understands that exposure is not just a risk, it is the end of everything he has built. And he is not a man who allows endings to happen without resistance. As these forces collide, the atmosphere in Port Charles begins to shift in a way that is impossible to ignore. What once felt like a series of disconnected tensions now reveals itself as part of a larger transformation. Institutions that were assumed to be stable begin to show signs of fracture. Alliances that once seemed secure start to weaken under the weight of suspicion. Characters who believe they understood their place in the world are forced to confront the possibility that everything they trusted has been manipulated. This transformation is not gradual. It is abrupt, disorienting, and deeply personal. For Sunny, the implications of Anna and Robin's investigation offer a chance at vindication, but also a realization of how close he came to being permanently erased from the equation. For Dante, it reinforces the danger he has been sensing, validating his instincts while simultaneously placing him in even greater risk. For Cassius, it marks the beginning of a countdown, a narrowing window in which he must decide whether to maintain his role or attempt to break free from it. And for Cullum, it triggers a shift from control to confrontation, from strategy to survival. What emerges from this convergence is not just a revelation of crimes, but a redefinition of power within the city. The balance that once held Port Charles together begins to dissolve, replaced by something far more unstable. Truth, once uncovered, does not restore order, it disrupts it. It forces every character to reassess their alliances, their choices, and the consequences of both. And at the center of it all is the realization that this is not simply a turning point, but a transformation. The return of Anna and Robin does not just expose the crimes of Cassius and Cullum. It changes the trajectory of the entire story, pushing Port Charles into a new phase where nothing remains hidden for long, and no one can rely on the structures that once protected them. The past is no longer contained. The present is no longer stable. And the future is being rewritten in real time, shaped by the choices that are about to be made when the truth finally breaks through. Because once that truth is fully revealed, there will be no going back. Only forward, into a version of Port Charles that no one is truly prepared to face.